Right, and a quick last one, but this is the beginning really. I've done this 100 times. Oh, I need to go. This is not actually a film, a series of films about van life. Let's be crystal clear. What this series of films is about, it's about psychology. Oh God, that's not very good timing. Can you please bugger off? Right. Might not look like it, but I'm actually, as much as anybody can be, a psychology expert. And most of psychology... Now what am I doing here? Right, this is really disgusting cheap coffee from Aldi. If I mix my disgusting cheap, super cheap coffee with this economy coffee, you have a coffee in your jars which is just about usable. And what I do is I have in the morning a couple of nice years I've wanted an assistant. That will do. Right. If I have in the morning, let's put you in there. I don't normally do it this way, but that's the new one. Right. Yep, so in here, let's just do it this way. Right. The disgusting coffee and the economy coffee. Mix them together. Oh, oh well. Mix them together and you have something that is sort of tricking your mind. Now, that sounds a bit suspicious. Right. Ooh, tricking your mind, meaning you forget. You forget. I know that the white label from Co-op is the cheaper, not so brilliant coffee. Okay, we got you. So you go there. And guess what? You forget. You forget that half of what's in your coffee is this disgusting stuff. So yeah, I have a couple of cups in the morning of the nicer coffee, which is the this one, and then rest of the day go on to the white label. However, my white label is half, because it's £1.50 for a small one of these and £1.40 for that. My white label has actually got lots of the really disgusting stuff, and it kind of tricks your mind. Now, this is not a good example of simple living. And I'm not interested in van life, even though off and on I've done it. What I'm interested in, psychology. So if you listen to the first video I made today, the price of food has gone up astronomically. And we knew that was going to happen for years. I'm not actually complaining. So there's two things you need to do when the cost of living has changed forever, has reset. Well, the first thing you really need to do is, if you're single, you need to couple up. A couple of weeks ago, for the first time ever, a report came out how it is so much more expensive living alone. I mean, just on the coffee. If you buy economy larger sizes of anything, they're cheaper. But let's get back to psychology. Top psychologists the last few years, thank God, have been writing that almost all psychology is wrong. It's kind of set in a paradigm that was very dubious. Now we look back at it. They don't know where to go with it, but there is, however, one fantastic bit of psychology which I'm interested in, and that's actually what simple living is about. Simple living, over time, is about one thing only. If you really want to go into the simplest possible dimension. And when you get there, God, it's wonderful. Because the whole point of simple living is it frees up your time. You can have your time freed up for doing bourgeois things, or travel, or sport, or whatever you're into. Or if you're going to take part in society at a kind of level where you're, as I have for 20 years, a lot of the time, but I give up. You have to have your time freed up for this. And so learning how to live simply gives you time and energy, actually, as well. It's terribly important. So that you can serve your society in however way you is your forte, although there are standard ways. It's about truth to power, almost always. Much more so it's going to be that way over the next decade or two. Psychology. There is only one great bit of, there's only one great bit of recent psychology. The Black Swan. Nicholas Hassim Taleb's book, The Black Swan, is nothing fancy. Oh, it's dressed up in economic theory, but he deliberately wrote this book, which is essentially fable, parable, word picture, and it's superb. It's the foundation of a huge amount of psychology, or when things go wrong psychologically as well. It's quite simple, but it refers to simple living. Once there is a change, once you've taken a different path, or you're going along a path and you realise that that path actually is much more problematical or stony, you can never know how you're going to feel once you've carried on down that path, or once you've taken a different path. It's impossible to know. And almost all life coaching, mindfulness, and much of therapeutic psychology is based on a totally wrong model of being in control via a menu of what you need. Now, simple living, particularly if you're extremely poor, as I have been, diverting my life into other things, off and on for 20 years, when you're really forced down a direction, a change. Now, it can be something so simple like moving from a decent coffee to a less decent one is actually, when you're middle-aged, it's like this is an affront to your whole existence. But let's think of something a little bit more seemingly prosaic, but actually deeper. Okay, when you get used to, as I have this winter here, when you get used to actually, I don't need a bath or shower every few nights. I can go 10 days. Now, if I were going to have a date and meet somebody I really mattered, I'd have a bath. Of course I would. I'd find a way. But I can plod through life quite happily by, I only have a bath in the river every 10 days. Sometimes in the summer it might be every 2 or 3 days. But every few days I change my clothes, I air them, and I will give myself, if I'm getting particularly smelly or if I'm going out, I'll give myself a top wash down, a rub down with a wet cloth. It's perfectly adequate. In fact, occasionally I've even asked people who I kind of know are not too prissy. I ask them, "Do I smell?" No, you don't smell. The only smell I miss is that of wood smoke. Living many years with a fire and a burner. Anyway, this is all Black Swan. The notion that you may be able to live simpler like that is terrifying. Before you've entered a new way, it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. My God, my life ends if I can't get to a shower or bath every few days. No. Once you've actually perhaps been forced into it. Now, in the summer and autumn, I'd be swimming in that river every day or two. So I'm having complete normal hygiene. Because there was a particularly cold winter, there was early December, there was 2 weeks of it being -5 to -10, -15. I had to throw that routine away. Now, there is a sports centre here which I could go and use for a couple of quid. I suppose I could have a shower. Now, it's so liberating. It is the simple life. Once you've got to that place of, it's not the end of the world. And there is no real material change in your life. If I were going to get on a bus and go somewhere, yes, I'd arrange that day out and arrange my having my once a week wash down in the river. I'd arrange it prior to going on a bus journey. But I know that 2 or 3 days a week I'm sitting doing a bit of writing and similar things. 2 or 3 days a week I make sure I'm doing a lot of walking for my keeping out of hospital. And I'll do my walking the few days before the next bath so that the sweat generated during the walking isn't kind of overly making me smelly. And believe me, it is truly wonderful. And the thing is, it's liberating. It liberates us. Once we can enter a more, what's the word? Just a more balanced, easy paradigm. I repeat, if I took on a job in an organisation where I'd have to be around people inside regularly, of course, you can't live that like that, really. Okay, you can get it down to every 5 or 6 days. But I care about what people think of me when they meet me. I want to meet more people. I don't want to be thought some smelly miscreant. But there's a way of keeping such a simple life in an extreme way, and yet just about getting by out there. One of the things I say, as I said, this is not going to be about van life. This is slightly contentious because we seem to have so many chips on our shoulders in Britain about class and status, etc. But it's not perfect at the moment. But often always I have a properly, it's not ironed, it's actually a folded cotton white handkerchief that's clean in my back pocket. No matter what I look like, no matter what I smell like, I always have that. Because if you're dealing with somebody middle class and you think, if you're talking with them, if you're meeting them, and you think that they're kind of judging you to be a little bit yucky, it's astonishing. Pull that out. And you can hear their mind working. I'm dealing with a man who has a folded, it usually looks like it's ironed, because if you dry them carefully and then fold them properly, they look like they're ironed. I'm dealing with somebody who has my preconception, my stereotype, or rather the better word, jumping to conclusions. This whole society, sadly even the last few months of my life, has become about people jumping to conclusions. So the conclusions that have been jumped to can be allayed by taking out that, and it does actually work. But Simple Life, this is just going to be about Simple Life, which is of course fundamentally a psychological matter, because the great majority of people the last 20 or 30 years have been sort of pushed into a hyper bourgeois mode where even ordinary people, young men, nobody in my age group, in my 20s or teens, would wear aftershave or anything like that, or anything smelly. It'd be like, it'd be ridiculous. Most young men now, they feel naked, they feel lesser, unless they're going, when they go out, prior to going out. I mean, nobody'd heard of deodorant. And I don't remember people being smelly. Nobody'd heard of deodorant in my 20s. It was like, that'd be ridiculous. Now, I know that the great majority of young men, they can't even face going out into the world unless they've got their smellies on. Now, A Simple Life is moving back out of that paradigm. And of course, doing it in such a way that one can function in contemporary society. Still, that's what A Simple Life is. But it's about psychology. It's about the most fundamental psychology, which for so many people has become this kind of neurotic need inside, not to conform. They've been brainwashed that unless they have certain complicated routines, they're somehow lesser. They're actually bodily lesser. That's how deep it's become. And of course, it's about revulsion and disgust. Well, believe me, and I'm a very clean person. Never compulsively. Well, I used to be in my 20s at times, so I know what that's like. It's quite astonishing how you can just let go and still have the same level of surface cleanliness, but actually, life's too short to be cleaning much. Now, I've got much more interesting things on Simple Life. This is like just an introduction, but it's for those two purposes, because you are freer. You can smile more if you've let go of these cage-like paradigms which keep most people in quite complex lives that are expensive. I'm sure these deodorants and perfumes, etc., that even the men wear nowadays are quite dear. And here's the point. The point is this. This is why I give up. This is why I have a personal schism. Because for 10 or 15 years I've been going around with various hats on. As a genuinely useful sort of social, environmental activist in certain ways, but a real one, like using law and things like that. And every single person I've met for a decade now says, I haven't got time. I haven't got time for this. I got a text a few days ago. I haven't got time for this. And if anything's worthwhile, you've got to give it a huge amount of time. And the reason people haven't got time is because they're trapped, they're caged in modes of being which are so expensive to maintain. And you've got to be pretty canny to back out of those modes and yet still have a functional kind of way of being that just about keeps you within acceptable to the mainstream. That's what I am a genius of. But it has to be stories that bring this out, which I'm going to do in time.